Ladies and gentlemen, as you are still standing, I'd like to, yes, may I have you still standing at attention? All hats off. If you have one, let's have the national anthem.
Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike, umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu.
IG, my chairman, Professor Ganga, and all distinguished guests, heads of diplomatic missions, vice chancellors, CEOs of state corporations, you are all welcome. I want to hand over the program to my peers to continue running the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Fazul. Nataka kuwasalimia asubuhi. Hamjambo? Msalimike vizuri. Hamjambo? Watu wa security wanafaa wakae chonjo.
Tufunge macho tuombe. Mwenyezi Mungu, siku ya leo tuko mbele yako kwa ajili ya mkutano ya leo. Mungu tupe amani, tupe nguvu, yoyote ambayo tutaongea siku ya leo iwe ya maana na isaidie mwananchi wa Kenya. Kwa yote ambayo nimeomba katika jina la Yesu Kristo, amen.
Asante sana Bwana Seita. The CS for Ministry of Interior, Coordination of National Government, the Chair of the Board for the Private Security Regulatory Authority, the CEO, the members of the board, my colleagues in the ministry, players in the private sector. Let me take this opportunity to, just like the CEO has done, to welcome you to this meeting, which is a very important meeting for us as a ministry. We will be running a very precise program because we are here for a very specific purpose, to launch the curriculum for training of the private security officers. CS, I just want to start, because I want to be brief, by saying that we started this journey some time back. We are almost 2 years plus starting to set up the Private Security Regulatory Authority. We have been struggling. We have been trying to get a budget item in our budget so that this authority can get on its feet and start doing what it's supposed to do under the law. We had a tough start where after the board was appointed, there was a mention of some regulations that were supposed to use to do the appointments, and we have gone through the whole cycle. Just the other day, CS, we took the following 11 regulations to Parliament. I don't know why we did, but I want to report that there was bad news of that effort. And I just want to say, so that we see where we are going, that the whole idea of setting up the private security regulatory authority was to bring order in this sector that brings in the excess of 500,000 officers into formal security infrastructure that links with the Inspector General of Police in an orderly manner, because the men and women that form 500,000 are the front line. They are the people that are interacting with almost 90% of Kenyans who require this service. And we had thought as a ministry that it would be very important that we link them up with the formal security infrastructure. And to do that, of course, we have this law and the regulations that we had done. The first set of regulations that we called preliminaries, basically trying to explain what the terminologies, what the law is supposed to be interpreted. The second one, set of regulation CS, was about the appointment. What do we do? Because the law gives you the authority to appoint members, but what criteria, especially for the institutional membership, do we use? So we had put that so that we remove subjectivity from this process. The third set of regulations that we put forward was the regulations that touch on how do the players in this sector make their applications to the authority. The fourth one, CS, is about training and employment of the personnel in this sector. The fifth one is on the equipment and tools of trade. We have very elaborate regulations and specifications that touch on that. And the sixth one is how, like I said in an earlier remark, that the intention is to integrate the private security players with the formal security organs. So we have regulations around that that talks of cooperation with the national security organs. The seventh one is about the levy, because there's an authority that's supposed to regulate, and we introduced regulations that touch on the levy. The eighth one on the general provisions that touch on the exercise of powers to arrest, the exercise of powers for the security players to search, and so on. The ninth one, which are basically schedules, is a schedule of, is just forms. The ninth one is a schedule of fees, sorry, the 10th one. And the 11th one is specification and standards for equipment and facilities. CS, these regulations were actually, for reasons I pray to God that I never understand, were annulled in their totality. And I want to say this, CS, that people who are here in this room, who run private securities, lobbied heavily over a weekend, heavily, that these regulations are annulled. So we don't come here, CS, and I'm saying this with all due respect to the investors in this sector, to shed crocodile tears. The reason why this lobbying was done, the reason why this lobbying was done is because it is touching on the remuneration of the security officers. Because the regulations are touching on minimum wages, and the players don't want that applied. But I urge you, CS, we have very many laws in this country that talk on how people will be remunerated in this country. We are here because sometimes back, you set a deadline of withdrawing the police from providing basic services like guarding banks, guarding homes of VIPs, providing specific VIP protection, so that the private security actors are trained and given that work to do. And it meant well, because it means that there is more revenue to the private security players, because they take over that job that has ordinarily been done by the National Police Service, and therefore releasing the police officers to do the public security provision for the general public in the country. And this, you had given a timeline. I remember it was a July of a year, but because the training hadn't taken place, that has not come to be. So I urge you, as we launch this curriculum today, CS, set new deadlines for us, and let us go by the deadlines. When we are supposed to allow the private security to take over the non-essential, non-critical security provision, let that timeline apply. And it is for that reason that we agreed, we look at the law, what powers does it give you, how does it empower you to even start this training. And we agreed as your principal advisors that the appropriate thing to do is to start this journey.
Shukrani sana Bwana PS for those encouraging and very vivid policy direction. It's now my humble duty and pleasure to invite Professor S.P. Ng'ang'a, who is the chairman of the board of directors, to make his brief remarks. Thank you.
Amjambo. The Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Fred Matiangi. Principal Secretary, Interior and Citizen Services, Dr. Engineer Karaja Kibicho. Director of Public Prosecution, Nudin Haji. Heads of Diplomatic Missions, Inspector General Police Service, Deputy Inspector General Police Service, CEOs of state corporations and government agencies, Vice Chancellors of universities, Board of Directors of Private Security Regulatory Authority, CEOs and chairpersons of private security firms, union officials of private security workers, or private security officers. Now, the training curriculum for private security officers level 1 draws inputs from experts and other stakeholders in the security sector in Kenya. There were wide and significant consultations on the key topics that formed the 18 sections in the curriculum. This enriched the content and context of the training package. I take this opportunity to appreciate the committee of experts that represented various organizations in the security industry, among them state agencies, private security companies, associations, unions, training institutions, and consultants. I recognize the support of the National Security Advisory Committee in the development of this curriculum, the first ever of its kind in this country. I acknowledge the immense contribution of the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Fred Matiangi, who provided overall policy guidance for this landmark undertaking to ensure the private security industry discharges its mandate effectively. The Principal Secretary for the Interior and Citizen Services, Dr. Engineer Karaja Kibicho, worked closely with the team, starting with the identification of the members and offering invaluable insights that assisted in the development of the curriculum. Finally, I wish to commend the CEO of Private Security Regulatory Authority, Fazul Mohammed, for spending considerable time with the team and being ready at all times to give advice and assistance whenever the team required it. I'm certain that the implementation of this curriculum will produce private security officers who can provide their services both locally and internationally with the highest possible level of professionalism. Asanteni sana na Mungu awabariki.
Now I want to introduce Brother Isaac G.M. Mandago, who is the Secretary General of the Security Workers Union.
Our chief guest, CS Matiangi, Principal Secretary Matiangi Kibicho, IG Hilary, Chairman wa board na CEO na wageni wote, CEOs na bawabu. Bwana asifiwe sana. Amen. Nione kwa mkono. Bwana asifiwe sana. Amen. God is good all the time. And all the time God is good. Nataka niseme mambo mafupi sana. Jambo la kwanza, Mheshimiwa CS, nataka nikushukuru wewe na ofisi yako kwa kutilia mkazo hili jambo la reform. Nataka pia nishukuru ofisi ya Mheshimiwa Rais kunichagua kwa board ya regulation. Sio ni sawa maskari? Si ni sawa? Hiyo inamaanisha kwamba yale masuala ambayo serikali inakuwa itachukua hatua ndani yake kwa hii sekta, mtakuwa mmehusishwa na tutachanga vilivyo mimi na Soita. Si ni sawa? Jambo la pili, nataka nikumbushe sisi zote employers, bawabu na consumers wa service za hii sekta. Safari ya mambo ya reform katika hii sekta ilianza kitambo sana. Mnakumbuka wakati wa kwanza ilikuwa na Mheshimiwa Professor Saitoti the late. Wakati ilifika kwa parliament, mnajua yala mambo ambayo ilifanyika kule parliament. Si mnajua? Haikuenda pahali popote. Lakini nataka nishukuru serikali ya Jubilee na timu ambayo imepewa hii mandate. Wamefanya kazi mzuri tangu tuanze mambo ya lobbying kwa mahoteli, kwa forums, workshop. Tukisema ya kwamba lazima pia tukue na reform katika hii sekta ya private security industry. Na hiyo ningelipenda sisi pawapo tupikie hawa wakubwa makofi ya hali ya juu. Sisi tunaamini na tunamshukuru Dr. Matiangi. Tunajua hii sifa yake. Yeye amefanya bidii, maana alikuwa kwa mambo ya ICT. Tunajua history yake pande hiyo. Yeye amefanya mambo makubwa kwa mambo ya prison reforms. Yeye mambo ya polisi pia amefanya nini? Wakiwa na wenzao. Sasa sisi ambao tunasaidia mambo ya polisi, tuna compliment. Tukae kwa fence ama tukue part of these reforms. Si ni kweli? Nione kwa mikono wako. Kwa hivyo Jubilee government ilikuwa voted on the platform of reforms. We are also Kenyans. Lakini nataka nishukuru pia serikali. Nimeona pia pale katika BBI pia bawapo mmekuwa nini? Sio ni mzuri? So hii ni serikali ya common wananchi, sio kweli? Wa Kenya mmekuwa na very negative perception kwa bawapo. Mnawaita watchman. Mkikuja mahali wako, unatoa shilingi 500 mnaweka kando, 200 mnaweka kando, unawapatia coins ya 20. Ati tuanze kutukia kwenda wapi? Saa hizi mambo ya watchman nimefanya nini? Mheshimiwa Fazul, sisi kama bawapo ni binadamu. Nyumba ambayo tunakaa Kangwara ya mabati ni shilingi 6,000. Maisha yamekuwa juu, tuko na familia. Mambo ya insurance cover hatuna. Kwa hiyo mimi nataka mniunge mkono na tunaambia Mheshimiwa Fazul, mambo ya minimum wage ilikuwa na Ministry of Labor. Mnasikia vizuri? Lakini Fazul na regulator atupatie living wage. Kuanzia shilingi 50,000 kwenda juu. Hapana mambo ya 6,000. Kwa haya machache Mungu awabariki.
Good morning, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Matiangi, the PS in the same ministry, Dr. Kibicho, the CEO of the Private Security Regulatory Authority, Mr. Fazul, the board members, the Secretary General of the Workers Union, Mr. Ndabwa, the CEOs of various security companies who are here today, all security officers, and all protocols observed. In the record of the history of Kenya today, the 6th of December will be recorded as a major milestone as the day the private security professionalism was finally anchored by the launch of the curriculum and training guidelines for the sector. And the sector has joined the league of other industries in the leading democracies of the world. Please allow me from the outset to state that I am humbled and honored to be selected to take a seat on the board of the Private Security Regulatory Authority to represent over 2,000 registered security firms operating in Kenya. The private security sector in Kenya is about 500,000 strong and supports a family of over 2 million persons directly and indirectly. It was therefore timely that the industry is reorganized and placed on a firm foundation of professionalism under the 2016 Private Security Regulation Act. This will accord the professional guards their dignity, deserved place, and standing in society, instead of the unflattering depiction in television comedy of the men and women who diligently toil day and night at their work of place, and the political public satires visited to them as cooks and watchmen. The Private Security Regulation Act of 2016 will ensure that all security companies follow laid down procedures in the way they conduct their business. This act should be in no way be construed as stifling the growth of any security company, but it should be seen as a way of guiding companies to adhere to regulations and at the same time look after the welfare of their employees. I believe, and I correctly represent members of the board of the Private Security Regulatory Authority by stating that we will ensure that anyone who wants to operate a security company in this country will have to follow the regulations as set out in the Act. This is similar, like all other regulatory agencies, such as the Kenya Bureau of Standards, the Kenya Poisons Board. We shall regularize and set out standards that will be adhered to by the guards across the board. Honorable Cabinet Secretary, sir, I'm not looking for an elective political position in the immediate future. Therefore, I can confidently say that we are privileged and proud to have you preside over the launch of the Private Security Regulation Act. Your no-nonsense approach to matters governance and delivery of service is what is needed during this period of our transformation.
Thank you, sir. Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Fred Matiangi, the PS, Minister of Interior, Dr. Engineer Matiangi Kibicho, the CEO, Private Security Regulatory Authority, Mr. Fazul Mohammed. I know the list is long. All protocols observed. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Mine is to join my colleagues, and I would like to state that this is the wave and the route to take in the security reforms. I've been continuing in the reforms within the National Police Service, and I'm pleased to say that I'm happy the private security sector joining us in the reforms. It is inevitable for this change, given the trend of threat in the global arena in security challenges. The threat is moving, the threat and operators, they are moving too fast, and if the state security and the private security don't reorganize themselves quick enough, you will agree with me, will be left behind and lag behind to handle our challenge. What I like to state, I have a lot of work which I've been managing, as the peers have just stated, and I don't have enough personnel to handle the security challenge. We have a big gap which you are filling in, but we want to fill in simultaneously and seamlessly in a professional way. This occasion marks a very important agenda for us so that we can have structured private security operating in almost understanding line with the national security apparatus. I have a lot which I've been carrying with me, the security of most of the government buildings, the security of the banks, which I'm very much aware this you will be able to do it more effectively. What I want to promise you as you come on board as professional, National Police Service will partner with you in many areas, including training. I would love to see trained to the standard that you are able to meet your challenge. I have enough colleges, both within Nairobi and outside Nairobi, to offer all the kind of tradecraft and training to speed up that reform, because we have up to April so that we are all together in the operation. Mine is to offer support, and we work as a multi-agency which is already running. This time we partner with the private security, and I'm very sure we'll have little challenges to manage if we all come at the same board.
My brother and my colleague, our Principal Secretary of the Ministry of the Department of Interior and Citizen Services, the Inspector General, National Police Service, the DIG, Mr. Gabo, and all of you, my colleagues and friends. Good morning. Good morning. Let me start by confirming to you, we are determined to reform this sector. And nothing is going to slow us, and nothing is going to stand in our way. We must achieve the objectives we have as a society. Because oftentimes in the public sector, in our country, we sometimes do more public relations than actual work, and we think that that's how we'll get the results done. We speak to each other as brothers and sisters because we are Kenyans. Those of you who are our investors, we love you and respect you, and we want you to succeed. Right now, in the private security sector, we employ about 700,000 people. Our plan as government is that we could actually, with the reforms we want to introduce, if we implement all these reforms, in the next 2 to 3 years, we could double the number to 1.5 million people. And that's how we provide employment. And for those of you who have invested in the sector, you should be very excited and happy at this time. We are basically giving you money because we are giving you business in parastatals, we are giving you business in banks, we are getting out of what my colleague, the PS and the Inspector General describe as non-essential and non-core security services, so that we leave this to you to carry on. Your balance sheet will look different because we're giving you more business, and you should definitely be very happy. My boss, our president, has committed himself to this. I have firm instructions that we need to proceed on this, and forward we shall move on it. Because we are training huge numbers, the National Youth Service. Today we have a passing out parade in Gilgil. A lot of our young people who are ready, willing, and available to provide services. So we support them. And the private security sector is one of that area that we want to grow, professionalize, standardize. The reason why we are launching regulations, curriculum today, is not that, as my colleague the PS has said, we standardize the level of training, we equip the sector. Because a lot of people, particularly from diplomatic agencies, were asking me, how can you give guns to private security organizations? And I was saying, no, we are going to do the training first. Once we do the training, we will have regulations and a framework within which this is going to be done. We're not a disorderly society who's going to wake up in the morning and give every Tom, Dick and Harry guns. We are going to operate in a very methodical manner. And that's why now we have a curriculum. Now we have training institutions are here. I can see my brother, Dr. Juan here, the head of the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, and I'm happy that you are involved in this. So that now we move forward in an orderly way and ensure that we do the right thing that we are supposed to do. So as we launch the curriculum today, IG and all my colleagues from the National Police Service, we are determined, and I want to assure you, we will support you to now begin training and maintaining high-level standards for the private security sector, as it were, so that you can take up the new roles. This is what the Act says at Article 17. The authority, that is the Private Security Authority, the authority shall operate under the supervision of the Cabinet Secretary. I am the Cabinet Secretary. So, in doing that, I am supervising. I'm doing what the Act says. This is the law. And it says, where the authority fails to maintain any prescribed standard in the fulfillment of its functions under this Act, the Cabinet Secretary may give general or special directions to the authority describing the extent of the failure and stating the steps required to remedy the situation. Again, the Act requires the Cabinet Secretary, who is myself, to prescribe what is supposed to happen as we move forward. In fact, what you took to Parliament as regulations are the service standards. And Fasul, I'm giving you 30 days to publish those service standards according to this Act. Prepare the Gazette notice, and the authority publishes those service standards. Because ask IG Mutiambai, he has what's called service standing orders. These are the service standing orders you are supposed to publish according to this Act. So I'm giving you the next 1 week, you should be done with them. And then you bring the ministry, the legal people in the ministry approve that, we publish that, like I said, notice. Because this Act requires you to do so. That is what this Act says. I am not the one who says this. That's what the Act says. And second, because the Act says that the authority shall operate under the supervision of the minister. So, here is how I would like to do my work. Number one, I would like in the next 3 months, because this is something I've gone through and I've studied with my colleagues in the ministry, in the next 90 days, I'd like us to do a compliance audit of all private security organizations in the country.
Put on the cape also. Huyo jamaa anakaa vibaya. Hapo sawa? Now this is how we want the private security officers to look. Hiyo ni picha mzuri. Ndio hapa upande tutakuwa tu tunaandika jina ya kampuni, but the general look is the same, so that wherever Kenyans are, they can be able to identify. If they are in distress, they are able to look and see that person is a person who can help me. And that is the direction we must go.